YouTube, what's going on? It's J&A Exotics and welcome back. Now today's video is going to be a reptile room tour. We haven't done one of these in a while and a lot has changed in the reptile room. There are still some projects in the reptile room that are not finished and are not up to my standards yet, but we have a long holiday weekend coming up. It's the 4th of July. And with that being said, if you guys are in the States, happy 4th of July. Now, let's jump into the reptile room tour. Now, to start off the reptile room tour, we are going to be looking at the emerald tree skink. Now, I do have you guys on the tripod right now just because it makes the video quality a lot better with a stable camera, but I will take the camera off the tripod and I'll bring you guys inside the enclosures and show you around. Now, this is our emerald tree skink that we got over at the New England Reptile Expo up in Manchester, New Hampshire. We had quite a bit of a scare with her. We bought her off of Sabrina's Reptile. She wasn't eating, she wasn't defecating, she wasn't really doing good. She actually seemed lethargic and lazy, but Sabrina's Reptile actually gave her a dewormer. I think she actually had worms and she wasn't impacted, and now she's back home. And as you guys can see, she is doing excellent. She was just eating crickets and waxworms yesterday, and I'm extremely happy that she's finally eating again. So really quick before I go over her enclosure, if the water bowl looks dirty, I am just out of work. I just got home, so whatever's in there, she put in there while I was at work today, but this is how it looks like when I get home. But nevertheless, she is currently being housed in a 24-18-24 front opening enclosure. See some crickets on the wall right there. She must be full from yesterday, she's not interested. But this used to be the green-keeled bellied lizard's enclosure, and now it is going to be her home. So over here is the emerald tree skink's basking spot, and this is where she spends a majority of her time. So on top we have an Exoterra hood that is just for visual light for myself, for filming and to see her better, and it's for the plants. And in the back she has a 5.0 UVB bulb. I like using these Exoterra hoods on top of these enclosures because the Exoterra enclosures are kind of flimsy, and I do have a cat, so I don't want her jumping in, breaking through the screen, and eating my emerald tree skink. But this is just about it for her enclosure. So as I mentioned at the beginning, the emerald tree skink is finally eating. She's alert, she's active, she has done a complete 180, and we are ecstatic to see her progress. That's enough of this beautiful girl. Now we're going to jump on to the next reptile. Up next in the reptile room tour is our bearded dragon. Now our bearded dragon finally has a name. My wife and I have been calling her Samson for the past 3 or 4 months as a joke, but we finally decided to name her Daisy, after the princess from Super Mario. Now I'm going to show you guys the enclosure in a second, but Daisy is currently being housed in an EcoFlex 120 gallon enclosure. Now this is going to be one of the projects that I mentioned that is not quite finished, but I literally have sticks and rocks from outside that I just need to throw in the oven and boil, and I'm going to put them inside her enclosure. So as you guys can see, this is her enclosure. It's 120 gallons as I mentioned. She's over on her hot side right now, and she has a play sand cocoa fiber substrate mix. I did make some ledges in the back for her so she can get closer to her UVB bulb, and they also provide shade and kind of a hide for her to get away from the UVB. It looks like she wanted nothing to do with her salad today. This is from this morning. I gave her some kale, some butternut squash, and some collard greens. So I do have another halogen dome fixture coming in so she can have another basking spot on her hot side, but right now she is currently under her basking spot, and the UVB bulb back here is a Zoomed T5 10.0 high output UVB bulb. Now this fixture is actually broken at the moment. It works intermittently. But because Zoomed is such a good company, I did contact them because this is a relatively new fixture, and they're going to replace it with no charge, which is great. All I had to do was send them the receipt, and as long as it's bought within the last year, they replaced the fixtures, which is awesome. But this is going to be it for Daisy. She's growing so fast and she's getting so big. It's crazy. I can't believe we already owned her for almost 5 months already. But we're going to move on to the next reptile. So down here in Daisy's old enclosure, and finally out of the bedroom, is Charizard. She's currently being housed in this EcoFlex 40 gallon breeder enclosure, and we're probably not going to see her today, but I guarantee you she is hiding right under here in her hot hide. Now this is her cold hide, that's her humid hide. Again, as I mentioned, that's her hot hide, and over here is like a mix hide. It's kind of in between the zones of the heat gradient between the hot side and the cool side. I'm currently using a mealworm dish for her water bowl, and this is just where I put some worms on her because, as I mentioned in previous videos in the past, she has a hard time seeing, so I was kind of finicky on even putting her in this enclosure, but it's time for her to get an upgrade. So I kind of have the camera in the log right now. Hopefully you guys can see her. I'm going to pull this out really quick. I just didn't want to damage my camera or scratch up the lens or anything while having it under there. But I did want you guys to get a sneak peek of the OG of the reptile room, Charizard. So I really love the way her enclosure looks. It's really basic. I mean, there's not anything crazy going on. I just love the background and I love the way her stuff looks within the enclosure, and it all kind of worked. This is where Charizard is going to spend the rest of her days, which she is getting old. I know she's not going to have many more days left, but hopefully we have more days. That's not really something I want to think about, so it's time to jump on to the next reptile. So I'm going to keep this one short because I know we're not going to be able to see them. I kind of messed up making this tank, and they always hide back here in this corner, and I never see them until it's nighttime. But this is our crested gecko's enclosure. It's an 18 by 18 by 24 front opening Exoterra enclosure. And we have our pair of crested geckos. We have a male and a female. I mean, the plants overall are doing pretty good. This fern is actually making a comeback. It wasn't looking too good not that long ago. It was starting to die. You can actually kind of see some of the dead ends. The mother-in-law's tongue is actually getting a little bigger. This croton's just sitting over here vibing. It hasn't really changed. And I can actually notice the pothos starting to lean towards where the light is, and it's starting to climb up the back wall. So in the back right there, that is their food dish, and in the front, this is where a majority of the light hits. So if they really needed to come out and get some heat, they can come onto this front ledge right here. But as I mentioned, there's not really much to go over with this tank. Nothing is really changed, nothing too crazy going on. Now over here is our Vietnamese mossy frogs enclosure. They are in a 12 by 12 by 18. You can actually see one of them right up here. Now, Vietnamese mossy frogs are one of my favorite species of frogs ever, and we've seen them at one of the expos we went to. It was a Show Me Reptiles Reptile Expo. I believe it was in North Kingston, Rhode Island. We've seen those guys there, and I had to pick them up. My wife and I were like, yep, hopefully we get a male so we can hear them call. But over here is their water bowl. It's a very basic setup. It's not bioactive. Fake plants, cork rounds, etc. And these guys like it cool. So there is no basking fixtures or lighting fixtures on there except for this LED strip just for visual light and to give them a day and night light cycle. But again, hopefully you guys can see this guy pretty good. Sorry if my voice is louder than usual. I'm literally inside the tank right now. Oop, I just jumped out of focus. But these guys are absolutely incredible. Now, if you guys did ever want to own Vietnamese mossy frogs, I hope you guys do get the opportunity to own them in the future because, as I mentioned, these frogs are absolutely incredible to watch explore their enclosures, to hunt prey, and to listen to them call at night. It's absolutely incredible. So we're currently getting close to the end of the reptile room tour. I still don't have too many reptiles. I wanted to keep my collection extremely manageable and on the smaller side for the time being, just in case anything happened after what happened the last time. But this is the central Bandy Gecko's enclosure. Now, if I do sound a little different, it's because I'm currently in the dining room right now. Just because of those two large enclosures in the reptile room, our reptile room has now expanded into the dining room. But this enclosure is doing fantastic. The Swiss cheese vine has new growths on it, so that is exciting, and the fern over here is thriving. Now, these guys can be seen sometimes in this little cave in the back. I don't think they're in there. I honestly think they're down here somewhere, and I'm not going to touch that. Central Bandy geckos are a great display pet just because they're so small. I don't really like bothering them, and I don't like touching them too much. But just watching them explore the background, and they literally climb all over every square inch of this thing at night. It's truly incredible to watch them. Now up top there is a basking bulb that shines down right here. This is their hot hide and their basking spot if they want to come out and bask. But they are nocturnal, so they're not usually out during the day basking. But this light is weak enough so it doesn't go and interfere with their cooler, humid microclimates over there. Now over here is our Louis White's crested gecko, and she has a very, very basic setup. And it is a female, so once she is of size, she's going to be going in with the other two, and we're going to have a 1-to-2 ratio, 1 male, 2 female breeding trio. But she has this fake suction cup bamboo branch. She has some, I believe these are Exoterra leaves, and this is her feeding cup right here, and she is actually right behind this leaf. I'm just going to pull it back slightly. I don't want to bother her too much. But she is right back there. So overall, this is a very basic setup for this crested gecko. It gets the job done, and she is thriving in it. So I'm very excited to show off this enclosure. It's kind of like the centerpiece in our dining room right now. It was originally going to go in our living room, but we didn't have space. But regardless, this enclosure is just about done. There are a few more plants I want to plant in certain areas, but overall the enclosure, as I mentioned, is almost complete. So ZoomEd is a fantastic company. This enclosure was outside and it was broken. Both these locks here came off. The door hardware came off and it was snapped at the hinges. So unfortunately, I thought I was going to have to recycle the tank, but all I had to do was contact ZoomEd and they sent me all the replacement parts for free and they were at my house within a week. Now I think ZoomEd is a very stand-up company. They stand behind their products and their words, and whenever I had any issues, now this tank is give or take probably 5 or 6 years old now at this point, but even at this point they still send me free replacement parts for the enclosure. But inside this enclosure here is our pair of green-keeled bellied lizards. They're actually right up there in the center log. Now right there is the male. Both of them are hiding in this log right now. I'm not going to try to force any of them out because I have built a good relationship with these two and I do not want to ruin that. But if they do so choose, if they want to come out during the reptile room tour and say hello, that's perfectly fine with me. They're more than welcome. Now I do have two basking bulbs on top. One is a lower wattage bulb than the other, but that is just so they're not competing for a basking area if they do want to get away from each other and they're not stressed out. Now over here I do have a crested gecko feeding ledge for a water dish close to where they hide. I wasn't able to stick it on the branches obviously, but that is also so they can feel comfortable and drink up top high if they wanted to. There is a water bowl down here that's full of fresh water for them, and the misting system is not on right now. I just shut it off prior to this video because I need to fill it. But there is a misting system, a Exoterra Monsoon, that goes off several times a day to water the plants, and they're able to drink the water droplets off the leaves, and it keeps the humidity up to what they need. Really quick before I forget, over here too, along the backside, is their ZoomEd T5 5.0 Tropical UVB lighting fixture. Even though this is a fairly large enclosure, I went with a 5.0 UVB bulb instead of a 10.0 because the distance between the UVB bulb and the branches and this cork round right here where they hang out and bask is not that great. It's fairly close to the light for them to get enough exposure. Also, they do tend to hang out in this crack right here along the top, and that's fairly close to the UVB fixture as well. Now I do have this big palm right here and they are constantly jumping in and out of this thing. They do love it, and I do have a smaller palm right here. I'm pretty sure it's the same species, it's just not as big yet. And I have a bromeliad, and I'm not entirely sure what this plant is right here. The two vines on the back are fake, but they do look nice and they kind of add a nice touch for the time being, while all the plants are small. It's definitely important when you keep two animals together like this that you give them plenty of options for heating, for water, and plenty of hides like foliage like this just so they can get away from each other and they don't get too stressed out. If the reptile feels safe and it's not stressing out, it's going to be a lot healthier and it's going to make handling attempts with these reptiles a lot easier. Look at him. There he is. I love these guys so much. These guys are probably one of my favorite reptiles ever at the moment. Alright, I'm going to wrap this reptile room tour up. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed that video, smash that subscribe button, hit the like button, drop a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.